In our headlines on this Tuesday, January 6th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung calls for a new phase in partnership between Seoul and Beijing, while his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping reaffirms the importance of bilateral ties, highlighting the need for active interactions. Over in the US, this year's Consumer Electronics Show kicks off in Las Vegas, and ahead of the annual event, a number of industry giants, including Samsung Electronics, host separate media sessions for a preview of their latest innovations. Meanwhile, back here on the local front, the country's foreign exchange reserves shrink to $428 billion in December last year, for the first time in 7 months, as relevant authorities take measures to address the weakening South Korean currency. We start our newscast today with coverage of President Lee Jae-myung's state visit to neighboring China, where he sat down with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping for a second summit that stressed the significance of strengthening partnership. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min covers Monday's summit engagement in Beijing.
The summit in Beijing began with the red carpet treatment and a 21-gun salute, as President Lee Jae-myung was given an official welcome by his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. During their 90-minute-long talks on Monday, the South Korean leader vowed to consolidate the Seoul-Beijing strategic partnership and make it irreversible.
이번 정상회담은 2026년을 한중 관계 전면 복원의 원년으로 만들 중요한 계기가 될 것입니다.
The sentiment was echoed by the Chinese leader.
As friends and neighbors, there should be more frequent visits between China and South Korea, and the two countries should communicate more actively.
High on the agenda was resuming dialogue with North Korea.
한반도 평화를 위해 실현 가능한 대안을 함께 모색하겠습니다. 번영과 성장의 기본적 토대인 평화에 양국이 공동 기여할 수 있도록.
Amid complicated geopolitics, she noted the two countries fighting together in the past against Japan's colonialism in the early 20th century.
The two countries should firmly stand on the right side of history and make the choices that are strategically right.
And according to China's Xinhua News, she called for the need to work together to oppose protectionism and practice true multilateralism, apparently with Beijing's rivalry with Washington in mind. After the talks, more than a dozen MOUs were signed, including on climate, digital technology, and intellectual property rights. Also on the table were sensitive issues, such as China's unauthorized steel structures in the West Sea.
As the maritime boundary in the West Sea has not been clearly demarcated, the two sides agreed to hold vice-ministerial talks within this year to discuss defining the boundary.
On the cultural front, the leaders have agreed to gradually expand exchanges, beginning in areas including the board game Go and soccer, amid China's unofficial ban on Korean cultural content. Also suggested was China expanding its delegation of pandas. Other focuses were addressing negative sentiment and hate speech targeting each other's countries, as well as expanding cooperation on investment and supply chains. Yi was the first state guest to be hosted by Xi in the new year, and it was their second summit in around 2 months.
While their first engagement 2 months ago was more of a get-to-know session, their focus this time was taking a step further to strengthen bilateral cooperation and deepen personal bond. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Beijing.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI index soared past 4,500 today and proceeded to close trade at that level this afternoon. Our Park Gun-woo covers Tuesday's rally and the factors behind it.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI surpassed the 4,500-point mark for the first time in history on Tuesday. The index has posted record highs for 3 consecutive trading sessions, after breaking the 4,300 mark on Friday and climbing past 4,400 on Monday, a gain of roughly 100 points each day. Earlier on Tuesday, the KOSPI opened down more than 0.25% from the previous close, but later reversed course and moved higher. The market closed at over 4,525, up by more than 1.5% from the previous trading day, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq finished at nearly 956, down 0.16%. Individual investors and institutions were net buyers, purchasing more than 762 billion won and 139 billion won respectively, while foreign investors sold a net nearly 1 trillion won worth of shares. Among the heavyweight stocks, SK hynix turned higher during intraday trading, providing upward pressure on the broader index. Shares of the chipmaker rose sharply, once even briefly reaching 720,000 won, marking an all-time high. Investor attention has been focused on SK hynix following the company's plans to unveil its next-generation high-bandwidth memory product at CES 2026. Buying momentum also strengthened after reports that SK hynix CEO Kwak No-jung is set to meet NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang. With South Korean stocks gaining momentum on the back of strong chip shares, attention is now turning to whether the KOSPI could move closer to the 5,000 mark. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, for the first time in 7 months, South Korea's foreign exchange reserves shrank in December last year as authorities took measures to address the weakening South Korean currency. Our Park Junan has details.
South Korea's foreign reserves fell for the first time in 7 months in December last year due to interventions aimed at managing currency volatility. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the country's foreign reserves in December stood at just over $428 billion, down $2.6 billion from November. This is the largest December foreign reserves decrease since the Asian financial crisis in 1997. Prior to the drop, South Korea's foreign reserves had risen for 6 consecutive months from a near 5-year low of about $404.6 billion in May to $430.66 billion in November. As of late November, South Korea ranked 9th globally in foreign reserves, with China and Japan ranked 1st and 2nd. In December of last year, foreign exchange authorities in Korea issued strong verbal warnings, telling market participants to be mindful that expectations of further depreciation of the won could lead to unfavorable outcomes. Following government efforts to cool the FX market, the $1 exchange rate saw a drop. The $1 exchange rate, which hovered around 1,484 won in late December before the intervention, closed the year at approximately 1,441. Park Junan, Arirang News.
And the world's largest trade show opens on this Tuesday in Las Vegas. And ahead of the annual event, industry leaders including Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor Group and NVIDIA hosted their own media sessions to share their strategies to enhancing the consumer experience. Our Kim Do-yeon was there.
While the show floor is still being prepped, the media frenzy has already begun at CES 2026 in Las Vegas, with industry giants unveiling their visions early. On Sunday night local time, in front of a crowd of 1,800 media and industry insiders, Samsung declared its mission to embed AI into every aspect of daily life.
No company can do what we do. We partner with industry leaders, innovating together to create the best AI experiences and deliver strong user benefits.
This comes as Samsung Electronics has set up an exclusive exhibit, marking the first time the tech giant has stepped away from the main Las Vegas Convention Center to hold its own standalone showcase at Wynn. At the exhibition, the keyword here is companion. Samsung aims to integrate AI into all appliances to ensure they actively assist and entertain users rather than just functioning as tools. For example, with the World Cup coming up this year, Samsung has created an AI audio assistant to mute out just the commentary or the crowd to personalize the game-watching experience. Among the hardware highlights is the new micro RGB TV, featuring a revolutionary definition and design that can stand with only minimal support. Beyond home electronics, this year's CES is defined by physical AI intelligence that interacts with the real world. The shift was palpable at NVIDIA's keynote. As the world's most valuable company by market cap, NVIDIA drew thousands to a packed venue as CEO Jensen Huang unveiled Alpamayo.
Today we're announcing Alpamayo, the world's first thinking, reasoning, autonomous vehicle AI. Alpamayo is trained end to end, literally from camera in to actuation out.
Huang emphasized that this new agentic capability where AI reasons, plans, and uses tools is being open sourced, effectively giving industries a blueprint to build their own physical AI. This trend extends to robotics as well. Hyundai Motor released its new robot lineups for Boston Dynamics, simultaneously announcing a partnership with Google's DeepMind to jointly develop next-generation humanoid robots and AI controls. Meanwhile, South Korean innovation is dominating the event's accolades. For the third consecutive year, Korea won the most innovation awards. Domestic firms took home around 60% of the some 280 awards given out, and notably about 80% of those winners were small to medium-sized enterprises. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un made a symbolic visit to the construction site of a memorial for North Korean soldiers who lost their lives in Russia's war against Ukraine. Photos shared by the regime's state-run media show Kim, accompanied by his wife Ri Sol-ju and daughter Chue, driving a forklift and digging the ground to plant trees. Construction was launched last October, and this marks North Korea's first memorial commemorating those killed in action overseas. The regime also made official commendations to soldiers who joined Russia's military campaign against Ukraine back in August and unveiled a plan to build and name a new street in Pyongyang for those killed in the battlefield. Over in the U.S., Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro insisted on his innocence in federal court in Lower Manhattan back on Monday as he faces conspiracy charges brought by the Trump administration. Our Ising Jae has the latest.
Deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty to charges in the U.S., including narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and weapons offenses. Maduro entered the plea in a federal court in Manhattan just days after being captured by U.S. Special Forces in an operation ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump. The arraignment lasted less than 30 minutes, with the judge confirming Maduro's identity and that he understood the 4 charges against him. During the hearing, Maduro insisted he remains Venezuela's legitimate president, calling his capture illegal and describing himself as a prisoner of war. Maduro faces 4 federal counts, each carrying a potential life sentence. The case quickly spilled onto the international stage. At an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Monday, the U.S. rejected accusations of aggression against Venezuela, arguing the operation was an act of law enforcement tied to long-standing criminal charges.
As Secretary Rubio has said, there is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation in furtherance of lawful indictments that have existed for decades.
However, Colombia, which requested the meeting, condemned the U.S. operation as a clear violation of Venezuela's sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity.
There is no justification whatsoever under any circumstances for the unilateral use of force to commit an act of aggression. Such action constitutes a violation of international law and the United Nations Charter.
Russia also accused Washington of abducting Venezuela's elected leader and demanded Maduro's immediate release, with Moscow's ambassador saying the United States had breached international law. Meanwhile, Venezuela announced a new interim leader. Vice President and Oil Minister Delcy Rodriguez was formally sworn in as interim president on Monday. The 56-year-old labor lawyer was sworn in by her brother, National Assembly head Jorge Rodriguez. Earlier in the day, Rodriguez struck a conciliatory tone toward Washington, inviting the U.S. government to cooperate on a future agenda. She said Venezuela aspires to live without external threats and hopes to move toward balanced and respectful relations with Washington. Her remarks marked a notable shift from earlier statements, expressing firm support for Maduro, as Venezuela faces one of the most consequential political crises in its modern history. 이승재, Arirang News.
And the Trump administration's military operation against Venezuela this past weekend is fueling fresh concern within Europe as U.S. President Donald Trump renews his claim over Greenland. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
European leaders are issuing warnings against any U.S. maneuvers to claim Greenland. Following President Donald Trump's surprise military operation that gained control of Venezuela, the U.S. leader on Sunday reissued a statement from last year that Washington absolutely needs Greenland, which is currently part of Denmark, a NATO ally. Greenland is strategically positioned between Europe and North America and holds significant mineral reserves, making it a crucial site that could enhance America's military and economic security. The Danish Prime Minister voiced her concerns, saying the U.S. has no right to annex Greenland.
I believe the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That includes NATO, and thus the security provided since the end of World War II.
She still noted that Denmark has always been a good ally of the US and wishes to remain so. The leaders of Norway and Finland also clearly stated that Greenland is Danish territory. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, while cautiously avoiding judgment on America's capture of Maduro, made clear that Greenland should not be subjugated. Trump has previously said he would not rule out the use of military or economic coercion to gain control over the island. Now that his administration claims to run Venezuela after capturing its leader Nicolas Maduro, his remarks on Greenland are stirring more alarm. The US leader has also hinted he may close in on Colombia and even Mexico. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The Trump administration plans to meet U.S. oil executives later this week to discuss boosting oil production in Venezuela following the removal of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. President Donald Trump said the country's oil industry could be brought back online in less than 18 months despite years of sanctions, underinvestment, and damaged infrastructure. In an interview with NBC News, Trump said rebuilding Venezuela's oil sector would require billions of dollars, adding that U.S. companies could be reimbursed by the government or recover costs through future oil revenue. The meetings are aimed at drawing American oil firms back into Venezuela nearly 2 decades after their assets were nationalized. Senior executives at ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips told Reuters they had not been consulted prior to Maduro's removal. Chevron is currently the only major U.S. oil firm operating in Venezuela under a limited sanctions waiver. U.S. health officials have cut the number of vaccines recommended for American children, reducing the nationwide schedule to shots against 11 illnesses. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Monday removed routine recommendations for vaccines against influenza, rotavirus, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, some forms of meningitis, and RSV, limiting them instead to high-risk children or case-by-case decisions made with doctors. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. personally directed the overhaul after reviewing how 20 peer nations approached childhood immunization, saying the United States had become an outlier in the number of vaccines it broadly recommends. Pediatricians and public health experts warn that the change could confuse parents and increase preventable diseases. In Switzerland, police on Monday say they have identified every person injured in the New Year's bar fire in Crans, Montana, putting the total at 116. Authorities say 40 people died and the youngest victim was 14 years old. 83 injured people remain hospitalized. Investigators say festive sparkling candles on champagne bottles ignited the fire when they came too close to the ceiling at the crowded La Constellation bar. Prosecutors have opened a criminal investigation into the bar's managers on suspicion of involuntary homicide and related offenses. Tokyo's Toyosu Fish Market has opened 2026 with a record-setting tuna sale. A 243-kilogram bluefin sold for 510 million yen, about $3.2 million at Monday's first auction of the year. Sushi chain operator Kiyomura Corp., led by Kiyoshi Kimura of restaurant chain Sushi Tanmai, placed the top bid, beating the previous record he set in 2019. The tuna was caught off Oma in northern Japan, a region known for prized catches, and the auction traditionally carries good luck symbolism for buyers and sellers. Pacific bluefin populations are showing signs of recovery following years of conservation efforts. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
You'll want to be prepared for some ups and downs in the weather this week. Seoul had a brief cold snap this morning with temperatures plunging to -7 degrees Celsius. As the day goes on, it warmed up quickly to around 4 degrees. The colder air will make a return, and by Thursday morning, the temperature in Seoul is expected to drop to -9 degrees. Dry weather warnings and advisories remain in place for parts of the Seoul metropolitan area and the east. Please be extra careful to prevent wildfires as strong winds have been blowing in across the mountainous areas and the east coast of Gangwon-do province. Chuncheon will start off at -4 degrees tomorrow morning with Daegu at -2 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 2 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 7 degrees in Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju. Starting from Friday night in central areas, rain or snow is forecast in many parts of the country on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we continue our coverage of President Lee Jae-myung's state visit to neighboring China amid the latest developments in the international arena.